Hello, I am Radagast at your service. So, because I was asked, Neil Keenan, of course it reads Neil Keenan, because I was asked. I was asked by some people, people who comment on my YouTube, after my YouTube videos, what do I think about the latest Neil Keenan, I guess, accusations. All right, so I'm gonna speak a little bit about that. Now, what's interesting is just a day or so ago came out a new video by the Critical Post the critical/post.com TV called the Gold War Report, the second preface to part 2 of the investigation into the Keenan fraud for 5th of February. Okay, so it's 4 days old. And what I like about this particular one is there's not about the Dragon family. I don't think the Dragon family is mentioned. If it is, it's very cursorily. And if it is, it would be mentioned more of the whatever branch that he's dealing with in Indonesia. That would be Neil Keenan is dealing with in Indonesia. But this hour and a half video, which if the newscaster wasn't quite so dramatic, it probably could have been cut easily by half an hour, but that's his style. We all have our style, and he was fun. It was just, I'm trying to catch some information to make this video, and I felt like I had to sit a little longer than would have been necessary to get the data. But if a story's unfolding of, a man who is kind of a con man, and is always doing deals. Basically, he's kind of a dealer. He deals. He does flips. He even uses the word flip in his own language, as he was making a recent report. How the smaller box that he showed, well, he flipped that for a larger box. Now, does this sound like up and up kind of people? Like we're doing deals and we're flipping? Does this really sound like a release of funds for humanity, or does this sound like a bunch of people? Somebody got their hands on this, and if they could get their hands on this, you could get that. And there was also, in the investigation, not having to do specifically with the box, flipping things has been kind of Neil's style. He's a dealer. He's a broker. You get this, and he's even recorded saying how they're doing something now that should get them $1 million, and then a week later they'll do something that get them another $1 million, and then after that they can go for $2 million, and do that a few times, and then I couldn't make out the name, but if this certain person got out of the scene, they can go for $100 million. So you hear wheeler dealer language. You don't hear about somebody who's been holding the funds for humanity and now is going to release them. This is not what any of the Neil Keenan saga is about. And I couldn't really, I saw parts of his videos, but I can't watch more than 2 minutes of a newscaster, because when you're being conned that obviously, when you can see that somebody is completely full of shit, you really can't take more than a minute or two of it. So Neil Keenan falls into that category. So I really, sitting down listening to his videos is not something I could really do. That would break a boundary for me. I don't let people shit on me, and Neil talking is shitting on you. So that's kind of how I feel about the character of Neil Keenan, and and his whole campaign. So anyway, so the Goldsmith, is that what it? Wait, let me get it right. No, Goldwater, the Goldwater Report. So the Goldwater Report, let me get that back down. Okay, the Goldwater Report really just lays out a line of a con man, a deal breaker, a man who lives by his wits, and so he's hot on the trail of knowing that some people are keepers. Sometimes apparently he confuses keepers and elders, and there's a chance that people calling themselves keepers and elders are kind of like the two gentlemen who now he's blaming have made off with $20,000 or $200,000, something with a 2 and some zero and a bunch of zeros behind it. And so now there's this whole thing of like why apparently in the trade for the bigger box, and all this money in trade for the bigger box, a down payment had to be made or whatever. So what you're seeing, you just see a bunch of deals, business deals. And now we're seeing deals that go sour by people that were in his company. And that's the other thing. When generally thieves or scoundrels keep the company of other scoundrels. So the fact that he has two people that ran off and made off with his money, and he's like, oh, the honest Neil Keenan was taken advantage of by these, by these shady people. The shady people are the people he hangs out with. These are his people. And so some of his people burned him, and now there's like what they did to me, and poor Neil Keenan. So, but then we kind of come into the whole, and the reason why people are asking me my opinion is because they know I will vouch for the veracity of the ambassador and the message he's bringing us from the Red Dragon family. I will vouch for that. I'm not saying I am not wrong, but if it's going to take a real bizarre turn of events based on not only months of listening to the ambassador and never hearing a flinch, always some additional information that would change things and give you an idea of the enormity and personal responsibility of us to get in alignment with what a world that works like this is. None of us are prepared for the kind of world where being self-responsible, even in the world of abundance, self-responsibility is how you stay afloat when there's plenty of stuff there. I will guarantee you, that you can have a world where it starts off with a complete jubilee and everybody's doing well. I mean, anybody who wants to save has enough flow to save. I mean, everybody, it's just everything is set up nice. I guarantee in that environment, many somebodies, but let's say a sizable portion. I'm not saying a majority, but not just a little bit here and there, will probably, whatever their flow is, will exceed their flow. And even in a world without usury, let's say you can borrow $100 flat, or there's a $2 fee for a borrowing thing. It's not interest, it's a transaction fee. Very reasonable. I think that's how the Muslim banks works. They have transaction fees for things, but there's no interest on anything. So I would guarantee that you could have people who start out with no debt, or actually in a decent abundance, and would still not only get into monetary problems, but probably would even have to borrow, and then still be. When there was time, like let's say you borrow some money and you have a contract to pay it off, or just in installments or whatever, I can guarantee that there will be people in the world of abundance who will still screw up. And the reason they'll screw up is here. And the dynamic that can create that mess is in a lot more of us than any of us are really willing to consider, which is why you'll hear the ambassador time and time and again about looking in the mirror of self-reflection. We think we look at and we see all these things and all the problems out there. That outside problem has been programming us for, depending how long you've been on the planet, for decades. And that programming is deep. And part of that programming is the duality thinking, the matrix thinking, the synthetic duality thinking, instead of holistic, in the field between the polarities, creative thinking, where you're not stuck in this thing. You can actually see things, and that's the kind of mindset, and it's also self-empowering, where you would never be thinking of looking for a handout. The whole thing is this whole abundance around you, and you're figuring out, this is what I do, this is who I do it with, and as soon as you get that figured out, you're good. And as long as you show up for your own self to do what you can do, they get to be, and basically you have to kind of walk to the reservoir with your pail. And if you wanted water in your house, all the water you wanted, you might have to build your own pipe, and then you're good. All right. So there's a lot of self-initiative and bridge building. I mean, there's one bridge coming towards us from that side. I'm not going to say coming down, because if you've watched my programs, there was one instance I made that this isn't a pyramid. This is a circle, concentric circles, and in the center would be an influential, whatever, and then that radiates out to other centers, and as those centers radiate back, as those other outside peripheral cities, towns, municipalities, states, countries, whatever it is, whatever that autonomous aspect is, also resonate back, and there's just this complete communication and flow, because it's all part of the flow. So there's a real wonderful message of benevolence and empowerment. And it's the empowerment part of this message that is being missed a lot, because empowerment is misunderstood as far as what it means to be empowered and be in control. And one of the reasons we don't know what it's really like to be empowered and be in control is because we haven't had real freedom. We don't have real freedom. We have welfare of all sorts. There's all kinds of giveaways that freedom would not come with. As far as those automatic giveaways, it's not this. Once again, any good system will always take care. But this, as you know, the system right now is basically so many. You have a sob story and you just kind of get on a tit and you suck away forever. And occasionally, you have to, give blood sample. You might have to do all kinds of songs and dances. But as long as you're willing to do the dance, you can have a nipple in your mouth. And freedom is not about a nipple. A nipple is for babies. You get it for as long as you need it. And once you don't need it, that's it. Okay, now you're on your own. It's time to start walking, making sure you get to the toilet by yourself. There's an enormous growth that is required by people as we approach what is coming. And that is a big, I have to admit, part of the delay with the capital being in the way is, to me, it's like a gift of sorts, because so many people go, I'm just too miserable. Don't tell me about mental preparation. Save me now. And again, if the capital gets out of the way, that can happen. I have extra smoke burning because just talking about Neil Keenan makes the place stink. But once the capital's out of the way, obviously, then there will be all kinds of abilities to make sure that nobody is in trouble. And also, once the capital's out of the way, the whole Jubilee thing can happen. And for a lot of people, the moment they're out of debt, any income that's coming in is now not immediately disappearing. You might have oncoming bills, but there's certain things like houses, mortgage. If you, credit. Basically, but if you had an iPhone, I guess you'd still have to pay your bill for your iPhone. There's certain things that you would still be hooked into. But if you had a credit card that was in thousands of dollars of debt in a Jubilee, your credit card was still, whatever credit card you had, if it was the system that created that Jubilee still supported that credit card. But if that was not the case, there'd be other ones. There's a modern system in place, and there's nothing wrong with the modern system other than the parasites that live in it. A system that allows for free flow of information and services, goods, and money is without a bunch of parasites just drinking at every moment. That's the system that we need, and any future credit cards would be in a system that doesn't do that. So Neil Keenan has been attacking. To me, he's attacking the message of benevolence by calling the ambassador and the Red Dragon family he represents as nonsense, as a fraud. Calling a man who's asking nobody to follow him. He's bringing a message. A messenger is not a Pied Piper. It's not like, oh, here I am, follow me back to China. Or Europe. No, stay where you are and get ready. And the most thing you can do to get ready is in your head. Some people might hear, oh, we're going to get a Jubilee. Well, let me go max out my credit card. That's exactly the kind of thinking that is wrong. And that is exactly the kind of thinking that when everything gets leveled out, those same people, there's no interest on the money I buy? Oh, that's great. Yeah, except for you still owe the money. So there is just so much preparation. So let me see what else I have here so I can... Consider why you don't believe the ambassador. Okay, so the ambassador just had a message. Before Neil Keenan started up his silliness, there were certainly lots of people doubted, and that's their own personal trip. But what happened was a lot of people who can only go, oh, bullshit, blah, blah, or, look at this, look at that. When the Neil Keenan story came out, and of course it was long, the very first one, the Pied Piper story, when that one first came out, it was like hundreds of people, suddenly had a story. They treated it as if like they had written it. Here, you support the ambassador. Read this. What do you think of it? All you have to do is read the title, that the ambassador is a Pied Piper. Know how nonsensical, how that's a non-starter. There's no sense. There's no Pied Piper other than Neil Keenan and his donate button and his reports. Oh, the Neil Keenan team. He's the one who wants followers. And the other thing we learned in the Goldwater report is apparently they have some intercepts where Neil Keenan was taking $250. If you give me $250 now, when I get the funds, you get $1 million. So now one has to wonder, how many people gave him $250? If 10 people gave him $250, and that's only $2,500, all right, he owes $20 million out. 10 people, $10 million out. So right away you can see, gee, maybe why you want to flip the box. Maybe that box it looked like it had a nice amount of gold, but maybe it was like $1 million, and somebody goes, oh man, I owe 10 people, I owe $10 million out for the $2,500 that I borrowed from them. I mean, you can just see how these various schemes are getting him deeper and deeper, making him more and more desperate. And so now when he did finally get something, the reason we didn't hear about it is because he flipped it. Now I guess we're hearing that in that flip, because the flip wasn't just a flip, but it required some money and two guys. I mean, does this story sick enough for you? I mean, I know some people are sick of the ambassador story because they're always going, oh, he keeps on saying the same thing. You're ignorant. Look in the mirror. But he says, he does say the same thing. So you have to, I would say, consider why you don't believe the ambassador. I mean, is it because of what a fraud and a con man is saying? Or you, before Neil Keenan started, do you have your own reasons? And it's good to know. It's really good to know exactly what part of the message of the ambassador is not sitting well with you. And that would be something great to put into comments. I mean, really getting clear with yourself. Not go, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. Well, something, get quiet, and just think, Dragon Family, if you get a feeling, find out what that feeling is about. Don't make it, our feelings are not mysteries. And one of the things that we do often is we ignore our feelings, and then when they turn into emotions, when they turn into little tornadoes that are tearing up the inner part of our psyche, that's when we look at them, but it's a spinning story. It's not this sweet little feeling that's going to give you the goods. So really, consider why you don't believe the ambassador's message, if you don't. If you do believe it, is there part of the message that you find disagreeable? There's just, part of this process to get ready is to really know who you are, really know your needs as different from wants, because their needs will always be taken care of in a healthy system. Wants are something that you can provide for yourself, because in a real system you'll have plenty of disposable income for wants. I mean, gee, you might have to wait a few months to buy your fancy car, cash new. So I guess that's it. Neil, I mean, there is such a wonderful message coming from the ambassador, and it's being lost by naysayers, official naysayers who have followers. I mean, if you look at the comments below Neil's latest thing, I mean, oh, Neil, thank you for saving us. I mean, he's the savior. He's the Pied Piper, and the classic Kabul thing just is to accuse the other person of what you're doing. A good case would be America accusing Russia of aggression in the Ukraine. I mean, again, here's this country. Russia is an organism with its own boundaries, and so Ukraine was a buffer state between the EU, which is a separate organism, and Russia. And now all of a sudden the EU decided to take its DNA and insert it into Ukraine, basically turning it into this, not instead of this kind of neutral DNA, it's now EU DNA. So now the EU DNA and Russian DNA are right up against each other, and that's becomes, you have to stand, you stand your ground. So basically the aggression came from one side, the other side's being defensive, and they're being called aggressive. And meanwhile, it's just a good immune response. I mean, when an infection is right on your membrane, it is time to take action. And so, similar to the nonsense that we constantly see from the lying MSM and the government that they're lying for, you always see finger pointing. And if you follow that finger back, you're going to see that they're actually using that accusation, hoping nobody's going to notice that they've actually done what they're accusing another of. This is what Neil Keenan did when he accused the ambassador of being a Pied Piper, because Neil Keenan's a Pied Piper. And okay, I think that could just wrap it up. I mean, this is a time of really important self-preparation, because things are really going to begin to start to roll out. Ben Fulford came out with his latest newsletter, which will be out, I guess, a few days later. And in it, he's there. I mean, there's a major story breaking in Europe about Victoria Nuland's assistant. And they grabbed him, they arrested him, and in order to get his own rear end out of trouble, he started singing. And we find out that there has been a counterfeiting of billions and billions of dollars that have been used to fund both sides in the Ukraine. I mean, they have people who are going on to the militia side and firing one side, or doing something in there and accusing the other. I mean, they're just stirring it all up, and they're doing a lot of this with the fake money. And one of the reasons you saw Hollande, this is, I guess the way I'm really saying it, and Merkel in Russia is because of this story. When they found out that the United States, or at least their proxies, were inserting billions of dollars of counterfeit, I mean billions and billions and billions, truckloads of billions of counterfeit dollars, and now it's almost hard to tell what is what. It's just this is at the level where finally France and Germany have said enough is enough. Now they're not telling you that in the news, but that's what this is about. What you are seeing is the dissolution of the EU. Which is part of the cabal. They're breaking from the United States. So just as I spoke in an earlier thing, how you kill cancer is you don't kill it, you cut its support, and it just withers and dies, because cancer is very hungry. It needs lots of resources. It's very sick, and once it can't get its resources, it starts to fold. And don't forget, February 17th is coming up. And that's when the United States is supposed to make a debt payment to China that it didn't make on the 31st. And they're scrambling for money in a big way. And then there's that other story that broke about all these, like 100,000 people who had all these accounts that are fraudulent. I mean, there's so many stories breaking here. And the United States is probably going to try and, it's just from HBSC. And I think what the United States might do with that is firstly try to grab some funds, because if they can grab enough funds, because these are all 1%ers, these are very wealthy people, and if they could somehow grab some of those funds in time for February 17th, then they could live a little bit longer. Because right now the cabal is in survival mode. I mean, it has its weapons, but at this point, it's really afraid to use them. I mean, using them is suicidal, and as crazy as they are, and especially since there's a certain, there's amnesty being offered, these are just wild animals that are going to have to be backed into the corner, and maybe a few of them will have to be put down. Who knows? But and then we have, this Friday is Friday the 13th, and it would be really kind of nice if on Friday the 13th, finally the Pentagon, which is, a 5-sided figure, so it's going to have to come in alignment with the 555. It has to. It's in the Pentagon. It's already aligned cosmically. Now that cosmic energy has to filter into there, and the American military will go back to its roots of being a defense force. I mean, the core, the good military is built from the Confederacy. People who have been part of the military for generations, and these are these are really good men who see service from differently. Remember, the South did not aggress on the North. That was a false flag, the Fort Sumter thing. The North made that because they knew that because of honor, the South would respond, and once the South responded, then they could attack them. It's what America's trying to do to Russia. Same tactics. These are not creative people. The capital is not creative at all because of where their main intelligence is. They're hooked up into the whole Yaldabaoth, archontic, very uncreative. Any new ideas, if they get creative, they stole it from somebody else. They didn't think of it. So. Okay, I don't know how I got off on that, but I think must have had some sense. But Neil Keenan is just Neil Keenan is about Neil Keenan. All right, that's the end of the story. Why? It's just like he's service to self, talking to service to others. Talk so he can serve himself. That's it. Hopefully he'll wake up and make it out of the jungles without malaria or something. And okay, that's it. That's my opinion on Neil Keenan. He's a con man. He's one of those. He's always doing deals. That's what it is. He's just a deal maker who's going to save humanity if he can just flip a few more boxes and pay off the people that he owes $1 million for $250 he got from each of them. And really, I just want you to listen closely to the ambassador. There is a message that is so from the heart that people have trouble hearing it because. When you come from compassion, you don't put it in syrupy words. You speak straight. You speak honest. You're authentic. And most people think, they're looking for more syrup in their good intentions. They're looking for the emotional cues to tell them that this guy is one of them. The emotionality is not really part of being an adult. I mean, I'm talking about emotion. I'm not talking about having feelings. I'm talking about emotionality. The emotionality is kind of like, I knew I shouldn't have done that, but my heart got the better of me, is usually what people say. Now, if your heart got the better of you, you would have made a wise decision. It's emotions that make us go, I acted emotionally. Yeah, how many times are you going to do that in your life before you realize that's not good? All right, emotionality is, you can experience emotionality, but when you start acting on it, you're just gonna run into all kinds of problems. And so the message that's coming is a message of such utter compassion that it actually goes over the heads of many people because it hits no emotional notes. Compassion isn't an emotional state. It's a state of wisdom. It's a state of gnosis and knowing the pain of the world and coming with a plan. So what you're hearing is a plan. But the wisdom helps to hear the plan, which some people have heard it from day one and have only heard that plan expand. And as I learn more by getting closer to some of this information, the plan is for real. People are working on it. But there's two roadblocks. The cabal is the first major one, and then consciousness. And people go, that sounds like an excuse. It only sounds like an excuse because you don't get it. If you get it, and a lot of people do get it, they totally. I mean, this is not like it. I mean, I talk to all kinds of people who totally get this. So that's kind of, if you're not getting it, the thing is, ask yourself where your resistance is. Really, what is it? And if you're making it about what hasn't happened, first of all, look at what's going on in the world and know this is part of it. Just in another week, the story will be different, and it'll be very obvious that the cabal is coming down piece by piece. It isn't a wall being pushed down by a bulldozer. A brick, a brick, a brick, a brick. And some of the bottom bricks will start coming out. And then at one point, there probably will be a tumble. But the other thing, and this is crucial, and it doesn't get heard, massive change. Don't forget, there's a lot of people who think that this is the greatest country in the world, and seeing certain people not suddenly disappear from office, even if they're not put in handcuffs, you don't see the perp walk. I mean, this is important. They would be traumatized, and one of the big, huge concern of the ambassador, and I think it really goes over a lot of people's head, is he doesn't want people to be traumatized. Because, as we all know, I mean, how many people are still dealing with their traumas from their childhood? Do they need another trauma? So there is more love and consideration for people in the planning of this coming benevolence than could be imagined. But again, as this bridge is built outwards towards us, there's a bridge of us to meet them with, and that bridge is our own preparation and being in our wise self, bringing the best. Again, coming to our own elite. Everybody will have their own, but you're bringing your best. And some of you who are still kind of new to this, if you see somebody who might get it, please. It's not to say don't respect your own opinion, but be a little more open. I mean, just be an apprentice of sorts. If somebody might have certain skills, there might be listening skills, there might be understanding skills that at the moment you don't have. And it's not to take everything they say verbatim, but trust them as you might if you were an apprentice and somebody was teaching you something. You would offer them trust, even if you might want to do it like that. But once you get your skill, yeah, you wouldn't do it like that. You do it your own way, and that's what makes everything unique. All right, I think a half an hour is enough to talk about this. So, before all else, I see the God within you.